Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Howdy.
What have you been up to this week, then?
Same as last week, unfortunately. I've
Hobbling
been
around the place.
hobbling around. This is my third today, our day of recording, which, by the way, is International Tiger Awareness Day. So
Is it?
I'm feeling the power of the tiger today because I've actually been able to. I finished.
Is that why you were eating that goat out in the garden?
It is, yeah. I still got a couple legs to get back to. No, I'm feeling better. I'm still a little bit like. There's too many meds to take.
Yeah.
But I shall soon be finishing my course of them, and my knee is feeling much better. In fact, I return to work the day after this is recorded, so that's cool.
Cool.
I get
No
to
animals.
see real people again.
No animal-based things in the process.
I'm trying to think if I have seen it, and the answer is no. I've not seen anything. Nothing at all. Unfortunately,
You've had a boring
there
week.
it is. I've literally, if I've not been on the sofa with my leg up, I've been in bed with my leg up, and if I've not been in bed with my leg up, I've been at the table with my leg up doing the bits of work that my colleagues and my bosses have been kind enough to allow me to do whilst I'm off to keep me entertained. Because obviously, up until like this week with schools breaking up, my child has been at school, out of the house, and my partner has been at work, out of the house.
You've had a lovely quiet time.
And very boring time. And one of those days, the power went out in the entire village.
Oh dear.
So I've just been too quiet. I'm looking forward to going back to work. I am a little bit itchy to get back to work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I've had the opposite. I've been all over the place.
Yeah. You've had a busy one, haven't you?
This has been an odd week. So the gulls are gone.
Yes.
The gulls are gone now. And that's in a good way. So it all started with me doing the usual sort of letting them out in the garden, letting them practice and fly and everything. And up until this point, they've just done little hops and little, nothing more than like about that off the ground. And clean their cage, put them back in for the evening. And one of them, the last one, decides no and takes off. So the way our back garden is, we've got forest at one end, or at the back, literally at the back, houses that way, houses that way, houses at the very end that way, back onto the road, and they've got a large retaining wall that you can see goes up like half the height of our house in sort of height. So here's me thinking, oh God, he's not going to make it over that wall. He's going to crash land in that garden. And I know they've got a dog. And I'm like, oh, I've got to get over there. So I fly through the house as quickly as possible. The other ones are back in their cage. Fly through the house, run round the corner to this other house, knock on the door. And as I see, as I knock on the door, it flies around the back of this house and flies out the other side and lands up on the house directly over from us. I'm like, oh, good. He's got the good sense to go up and curve round. He knows what he's doing. This is brilliant. This is what we want. He then decides to land down in the road. I'm like, oh, no, don't, because you'll sit in the road. A car will come around, or a cat, or a dog. And I'm like, oh, no. Yeah. I'm going to have to try and catch him, bring him back, and I can try and release him where we wanted to release them the day after.
Right.
So I run after him to try and catch him, and he just keeps taking off and flying a bit. I ended up running halfway around the sort of...
So you look like a madman running around an estate chasing a seagull.
Basically,
most people in that estate would probably kick the seagull.
I'd like to think they wouldn't.
You hope not, but...
I ran past the local park, and there's this family there, and I went, just completely out of breath, going, have any of you seen a baby herring gull that might have crash landed here? And they're like,
what's a herring gull?
Yeah, they looked at me and I went, seagull. oh no, it's too many of those. I went, yeah, yeah, yeah. You haven't seen one, have you? No, no. Something flew over that way, and I went, right. And then I just saw him out the corner of my eye. I'm like, right, ran after him again. And in the end, he sort of took off and actually properly flew a good distance. So I'm like, okay, he's got the good sense to fly away when some big, scary, crazy person is coming towards him. So,
Yeah.
and then essentially, I ended up giving up the chase because I was dying because I can't run anywhere near as fast as a bird can fly.
Well,
Shocking,
he proved that he could fly, and he proved that, as you say, he can avoid danger. So
Yeah.
and he could go up. So yeah.
So we made the decision to move the plan ahead of setting the other ones out. So that was Frigga that flew the
Okay.
flew first. So that left us with Boulder, Thor, as we've called him, because he had a Thor foot, the Thor foot, and Odin, who was the original one, which is where the Norse theme came from, because he came with the name Odin because of the street that he was on when he was found. There's an Odin Street somewhere
Is there?
around here. Yeah,
Oh,
I
right.
think it's pretty cool. So we took them to the college where I work and put them out into a large field. There are a lot of herring gulls at the college, and it's perfect because there are large flat roofs. There's at least a 3-4 story building. So there's like 2 or 3 buildings that are 2-3 stories in height, big flat roofs, perfect seabird colony. It is genuinely one of the nicest things to see from one of the office windows that I have is all of these herring gulls nesting there and rearing their chicks up. And this time of the year, there's no students.
Yep.
So it's perfect. It's quiet. There is plenty of, normally I would fear a bit if they were on the ground and there are students around because
They kick
some
it.
students can be really horrible and I just don't get how that can be, but that's just me.
Just
I
to be
like
clear,
animals.
this probably goes without saying, but it's not just Gareth's top subjects and Gareth's department and
Oh
Gareth's.
no, yeah, the whole place
top.
is animal. I wish. No,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
all
it's not
sorts
an
of
animal
students. There are
college.
bricklayers and all sorts of other things. But even at animal colleges, I've known people be horrible to animals. Because people are horrible, so there's not much you can do about it. So I set up there for the morning. We released them out into the goat paddock, and I sat there with the goats and these 3 birds, and then one after the next, they just took off and did their own thing and joined the other birds. So yeah, they're all out in the wild, done what we can do, done as best as we can, and I'm hoping that their godlike namesakes will look after them.
They're being watched over, are they?
I hope so. I did see a couple of ravens. No, actually, I didn't. A couple of woodpeckers. It's a really good
yeah.
spot for bird watching. Yeah, it's right on the edge of some nice oak forest, and there's lots of different birds that just sort of dart past.
Yeah. I have done something animally, but it's not. Anyway, it's just it's not as impressive. But
What's that?
it was cool. I've rearranged the corn snakes tank bits, and now it's got like you remember last week off of camera there was like a big branchy.
Oh yeah,
a big branchy branch.
A big branchy branch.
Yeah. With lots of climbing like options on it. That's now in his
Cool.
tank, and I've set it all up with him. So I've enjoyed watching him navigate over that. But did you see? This could have been in the news, really. But did you? I'm saying this for any locals who might be listening to this, or anyone who has a dog that might be listening to this. Did you see that a couple of people got bit by an adder on Braunton
Yes,
Burrows?
I did.
If ever there was a reason why you do not let your dog run around off leash, particularly this time of year,
In Braunton Burrows.
anywhere really, like your dog can
habitat
attack
famous.
livestock, or it can be attacked itself by wild stock. And
Yeah.
if I don't say lucky it was a person, but what I mean is we humans are of a size and of a immunodefense that we get away relatively unscathed. It's more like a bee sting for us. A very nasty, very, very nasty bee
Yeah, it's a
sting.
lot easier to get human treatment than it is for dog treatment.
Dogs, if your dog gets bit by an adder, you'd be
It's
very
usually on the
lucky if
face as
it
well.
goes if it ends up coming out of that alive. So yeah, they're just a reminder to dog owners, dog walkers, and any locals around that this is the season where they're going to be out, and the weather as well, where they're going to be out
Tourist
basking.
season, yeah.
Just be careful where you tread.
It's annoying. Everyone gets the sea adders, and I go looking for them, never find them. I'm gonna start sticking my head in the bush. Don't do that.
I was going to ask you actually. Now that my knee's feeling better, perhaps later in the week, if you're free when I'm free, we can go out and have a walk and see if we can record some footage.
Could be done. Yeah.
Broughton Borough isn't that far, so.
Well, I mean, I tell you what, as an introduction bit, this is quite long because I've got two other bits that I wanted to throw in here as well.
Okay.
So on the Broughton Burrows thing, that was not great. But the other night there was a photo from around Ilfracombe with two otters down on the coast playing around on the rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Around Capstan. That's Capstan?
Yeah.
And it was on one of the local pages. So there are otters playing around on the beach there, and it's unmistakable they were otters. Absolutely amazing. And then obviously the other thing, which I've literally come from doing before we started recording this evening, I've been playing with an extinct species.
Yes, you have been. Yeah.
And that sounds really odd, and it's not a skeleton. It's a live species. A very, very
in the
cool,
wild.
very, very cool, but very, very sad in some ways. It's the Simondoa cave cockroach, which is, as you just said, extinct in the wild.
By the way, I mean, cockroaches are cool anyway, but as you're probably aware, whenever Gareth covers invertebrates, as you'll probably see in today's creature feature,
Wow.
I am not particularly clued up on invertebrates. They're not my strong suit at all. But even I know about these guys, and I am very fond of them. I don't think it's from you I know about them. No. I think this interest came from my own personal.
They're really cool, and
interest.
I can tell you there will be a creature feature on them in the future, I think, and I do mean at some point in this year, because that just re-sparked the thing in my head. Why have I not got this one on my list? So yes, I've an animal that has been on my my sort of species to see list. They only exist in captivity. So I'm trying to think of other species.
Well, formerly the scimitar horned oryx, which is a conservation success story for captive breeding populations.
I think there's quite a few species of primate, isn't there? One or two. The northern white rhino.
Yeah.
Now functionally extinct, but this is a species that was almost wiped out, bar an American entomologist basically taking a like to the look of this cockroach, taking a bunch of them with him, because he knew that the area where they lived was going to be obliterated. And that's the only place that they know of where they come from. So, but yeah, I will cover them at some point in the future.
Technically, even your very, very fond creature feature, thylacines, they were still in captivity after they went extinct in the wild.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Now extinct.
Well, yeah, definitely extinct. Unless you believe Forrest Galante.
Which we don't.
I don't know why he's so
it's so reputable.
So trustworthy. But yeah, it's been an interesting week. So yeah. Should we head on into the news? Although I feel like we've done a mini news segment.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the news!
Every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories. And though we here in the Natural History Cupboard are a small team, it is our aim to keep you, our fellow cupboard dwellers, up to date on all the odd, good and exciting stories that are out there. So let's open up the Natural History Cupboard newsreel and dive on into some of the more interesting topics that we've found. And I'm off first today.
Yes, you are.
My first article comes to us from Sci News, and it's the news that new bird-like dinosaur unearthed in Mongolia. Cretaceous celebrations are in order as the Barungoyot Formation in Mongolia have revealed an exciting secret: the first ever troodontid species from that region. The new specimen, and it's got a really cool name, it's been named Haranadraco prima, which means the first sand dragon, which is an
Nice.
awesome name. And it lived 72 to 71 million years ago in the late Cretaceous, and adds a missing piece to kind of the Gobi Desert Trodontid puzzle, because until this one was discovered, they had Troodontids represented in all the other Mongolian and Gobi regions,
Just
but
not this
not
one.
this one.
Oh.
So really cool.
Oh, cool. My first one comes from New Scientist, and it's somewhat similar, actually. It's about an animal that has sharp teeth, and it's the discovery that Komodo teeth may actually have, sorry, reinforced teeth with iron casts.
Saw this, yeah.
And this has come from research that there's also leading some scientists to think that dinosaurs may have had similar, although I mean, it's a bit of a stretch to go from Komodo dragons to dinosaurs in some ways.
That's because when they've been looking at how some of the carnivorous theropods, particularly Tyrannosaur, fed, they've been using Komodo dragon as a modern day analog. Yeah, that's why that is.
So Komodo dragons, they've noticed that there is an orange secretion on the animal's teeth, and Aaron LeBlanc at King's College London has said he initially dismissed it as staining. Only after visiting various different museum collections did he realize that this was actually on most of the Komodo dragon skulls that you're seeing, and it appears to be like an iron sort of capping to their teeth, making them super sharp.
My next one again comes from Sci News, and this is the news that Miocene giraffid species had 2 pairs of ossicones, which is fantastically cool. If you look at this article, the pictures, the representations of these animals are, I would say, actually pretty fear-inducing for a herbivorous giraffid.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to pick a fight with it.
No. So a team of paleontologists excavating fossil yielding sites in northern Pakistan have discovered a new genus and species of giraffe dating back to the Miocene, some 9 million years ago. The animal, Bramiscus micros, it was kind of on the smaller side for giraffid species. But what's most interesting about it is that it appears to, as I say, have had 2 pairs of ossicones. Now, the ossicones are the protrusions on the skull that kind of look a little bit like horns on your giraffes today. So yeah, again, just another really cool discovery.
My next one is from the BBC, and it's Skipper catches rare sturgeon in Devon waters. Skipper Sean Beck said that the sturgeon that was caught, and he gets a lovely photo of him holding the sturgeon, was about 4 foot long, or 1.2 meters in length. And it's a rare species in UK waters, sadly, because our waters are shocking. It's considered as well, I believe, a average size sturgeon, although beluga sturgeon can get much, much bigger. This is just a normal European, but it was found in the Dartmouth on Saturday afternoon when his crew caught the fish. I believe as well it's declared a royal fish due to their superior excellence by King Edward II in the 14th century, measuring all sturgeons landed have to be offered to the crown, although nowadays it's just a formality. I'm sure King Charles was informed that his tea had arrived. He'd have to just go all the way to the Dartmouth to go and get it. Although something says that he probably wouldn't.
Thank you.
Oh, good. I was after fish and
What
chips.
a lovely fish.
Why is he now Santa?
I don't know.
Moving on.
Yeah. Quickly. So my next article, my last article for the newsreel, is from phys.org, and that is New Zealand's flightless birds are retreating to moa refuges. So this is, it's sad news, but it's also very interesting, I thought. Scientists from the University of Adelaide lead an international team of researchers in the study of fossils and computer monitoring, with some haunting findings. The study revealed that populations of the 6 extinct species of moa all collapsed and converged in the same areas on the North and South Islands, typically very isolated places. And essentially these very eerily isolated mountainous Moa graveyards are exactly where we find the populations of New Zealand's rarest flightless birds today. So that's birds such as the takahe, the weka, the great spotted kiwi, and the mainland populations of kakapo. They're all found on what is described as not necessarily optimal habitats for them, for those species, but essentially, by the way, neither really optimal habitat for moa, but essentially, it's basically the last place they can go and thrive because
they've been pushed out.
Yeah, it's the last place that humans will go to, and it's the least disturbed by human activity.
Let's hope it pushes back the other way, and we start to see. I mean, wekas are brilliant because they are found in a lot more places nowadays. Yeah, they're a brilliant little bird, a type of rail, and takahe are awesome as well. I've never seen one, but I would love to see a takahe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see a kaka. Basically, that's a list of birds I want to see.
Yeah, I was going to
I've
say,
only seen one of them.
Who's who of birds we'd love to see, basically.
So my final one is from the People's Trust for Endangered Species. And if you remember the other week, I was talking about how storks are supposedly going to be reintroduced to London. And I said, I'd love to see that down here more than anything. Well, there is an article this week, Can we bring white storks back to Devon? And specifically onto the Dart Estuary in South Devon. So we've got sturgeon there now. Why not white storks?
Devon seems to
they get all the cool stuff. I know. Well, we got some otters playing around Ilfracombe this week. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So since the species went extinct in 1416 in Edinburgh, the main reason for their decline has been hunting and changes to their habitat. And basically, the mainland European population has also faced serious threats as well, dipping to its lowest point in the 1980s. But reintroduction programs right the way across Belgium, Sweden, Switzerland, and the Netherlands have helped the populations recover. And in the UK, recent efforts near Knepp in Sussex have also paved the way for this species to be reintroduced into different areas. And the Dart, or the River Dart estuary, is looking like one of those places where we may possibly see the reintroduction of European storks.
Very cool.
Storks, basically, which is what I want to see. I want to see big birds flying in our skies. Let's get pelicans back as well. There's thought that pelicans used to live here as well.
Yeah, I remember we even mentioned that in the talk that we did in the North Devon Library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there'd be people who would probably go, no, we never had pelicans. But no, we've had so many animals that we have wiped out and just lost any and all knowledge of.
It's kind of hard to know what we hard to rule it out, especially when you consider what their historic range was.
Well, I mean, it's an animal that can fly from mainland Europe.
Yeah,
not really much of an issue.
Not stretch, is it?
No, not really
at all.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Cupboard newsreel. Guys, if you have topics or articles of interest that you'd like us to share here, you know what to do. Get in contact with us. You can use email, you can use Facebook or any of the other social medias.
Send a pelican.
I was going to say, you can send a Dalmatian pelican or any type of pelican. We'll be happy to see any type of pelican.
I'd like an Australian one, please.
Send us a sturgeon up the river. There we go, with a little raven. I'm going off the
you're going Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll crack on. Basically, send it to us any way you can, and we'll make sure it gets covered here or in the main topic. And main topics with me today. And this one again comes to us from phys.org. And the headline is "Scientists figure out why there are so many colourful birds in the tropics and how these colours spread over time." And I've chosen this one not just because it's interesting to me, because it talks about, the study itself talks about pigmentation and structural coloration and stuff, but also because I'd be a little bit interested to hear what people think at the end of this. So this is another attempt at a bit of a fun article on my part, basically to discuss what you guys might have seen. And hopefully it gets people shouting at us about colourful birds. Essentially, it's long been accepted that the closer you are to the tropics and to the equator, the more colourful birds tend to be outside of your window or on your bird feeder. But it's not really ever been fully understood why that is, why we get up here more drab colours. Not always, not
I think that's a
always.
slander on British and European birds.
because
Yeah,
the European beaters,
yeah.
my favorite looking European bird, I think. But even the drab ones, you've got
it's
robins with
subtle.
a red chest. You've got red
Bullfinch.
kites, bullfinches. Yeah, we do have beautiful birds
Green
here.
woodpecker, osprey.
Ravens, I know they're black, but there's an iridescence to their
Yeah.
feathers. Magpies, I think, are stunning.
Eider ducks.
Eider ducks, yeah. But it's no bird of paradise, and it's no
Show off.
macaws and stuff
Yeah,
like
all
that.
right. It's not a macaw.
So yeah, the study being reported on can be found in the journal Nature, Ecology and Evolution if you want to read it, and I suggest you do. And it details how scientists have logged have logged 9,409 bird species. Bear in mind, there's just over or around about 10,000 species of birds around today. So they've logged the vast majority of bird species into a database in order to demonstrate how color has spread globally. The article gives iridescence as an example, stating findings that showed that such feathers originated 415 times in the bird family tree of life, and that most of these species actually came from outside of the tropics, meaning that iridescent colored feathers actually made their way to the tropics, to warmer climes, presumably where it's more comfortable to live. I know I would go to the tropics if I could.
Does that work as well with humans? You know, I'm saying this in the sense that you walk around, I don't know, Barnstable, for instance.
Yeah.
Most people are in black, green, brown. Go to the tropics. People are wearing Hawaiian shirts. You know, bright colors. Do we do the same thing?
Do you know what? It's been a weird coincidence this week because I've been at home a lot more. I've been on social media a lot more. And it just so happened that me and Atta have been talking about maybe going to Asia for a little bit of
Just pop out to Asia.
A little bit of travel, see the world a bit. And all these memories have come back of my time in Asia, right? And it's brought home memories of other places I've been to in the world. And I have to say, we are the drabbest country, like in terms of color. You go to these other places and there's these colourful, just everything is exploding with rainbow colours and stuff. I'll have to get some pictures up behind me as I'm talking about this. But just stunning. And now you've pretty much mentioned it there too, and we're talking about it again. But yeah. So yeah, interestingly, the researchers also point out that the ancestor of all modern birds likely had iridescent feathers itself, suggesting that this coloration is the default state of the bird family as it's spread. Now, how birds actually display these colors comes down to kind of two kind of factors. You've got pigmentation, which is the biological element, and how and then there's how cell structures actually kind of physically affect the absorption and reflection and refraction of light that hits it. And that is how that's where feathers owe iridescence to. It's the way the light hits the feather, the cells within the feather, that makes the feathers iridescent color. So yeah, tropical birds use both mechanisms, as I'm sure you're probably aware from, even if you weren't aware, me just describing how iridescence works with cell structure will fill in the blank, because you already know about pigments and how they affect color. But basically, birds use both mechanisms of color creation, but the team's work actually focuses more on the structural source of color display, and therefore that's why iridescence is so important to them. And so this is why this is what they looked at specifically on tropical birds. The feather coloration database that they collected was cross-referenced to existing DNA-based the bird family tree, the DNA-based bird family tree, which allowed the team to observe which species showed iridescence, again, for example, and how each species was related, and do these two things simultaneously, allowing them to map the spread of these colorations through not just time and space, but also through family members. And they found that these colorful species from outside the tropics were often actually the pioneers, and they would arrive to the region millions of years ago, before speciating in over time to the many species that we see around today that show iridescence, among other colors. Now, whilst this key aim of the study was satisfied, and we now understand the spread and origin of the colors that we see in certain areas of the world, scientists have yet to define or understand why iridescence evolved in feathers at all. There are theories that are worth considering. They look at factors such as environmental issues, environmental changes, that humidity was one of the things that they talk about. Attracting mates, it might be to attract mates, or perhaps because it's to do with cell structure that creates iridescence, perhaps the actual physical structure of the feather has a use or a benefit, and the iridescence is a byproduct of that. So yeah, really probably a bit too heavy to go into in the news article section, but yeah, fascinating, really something that I'm interested in. So yeah, really cool. But as I say, it is an interesting one, and it basically, when I read this article, because I wasn't reading this article or this study originally for this segment, I was reading it for my own interest. But at the end of having read it, especially the news article itself, I was kind of left wondering, like what's the most colourful species I've seen out of my window? I wonder what Gareth has seen, Drew.
Are we talking in the UK?
UK? No, it has to be where you live.
I was going to say.
I suppose you could go down the route of Australia if you remember.
Yeah.
But I would actually be genuinely interested to hear from yourself and from our listeners. I don't know if this will be our question, but certainly a sub question.
I think it's certainly a good contender for it.
Yeah. What's the most colourful species that you see out of your window or on your bird feeder at home?
I mean, we sort of had a very similar thing to that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
We did have something similar, yeah.
So I would say probably the most colourful bird I've ever seen out of a window here in the UK is gonna be something like a jay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or a bullfinch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even tree creepers are pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never seen a kingfisher out of my window, but I've seen kingfishers. And I would also say that red kites and the myriad of things like of different waterfowl species. I mean, they're not native, but ringneck pheasants.
Yes.
They're very, very brightly coloured birds, but I've never seen one out of my window. Oh no, I have actually. When I used to live on that farm. Yeah.
For me, it's really difficult because you mentioned kingfishers, which would be my answer. It's a literally, this is probably not an exaggeration. It's about a 1 minute walk, if that.
It's not out your window though.
But it's not out the window, no. So I would say that the most colourful bird species I've seen out of my window with regularity would be bullfinches, but I think if you take regularity out of the equation, it's got to be the green woodpecker, I think.
Yeah, they're pretty bright birds.
I would say green woodpecker is the brightest, most colourful bird that I've seen out of my window.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah,
and honestly, if you're interested in that kind of thing, and I think more people should be, it's really worth checking out the article at least, but certainly the study is cool.
Well, should we head on into our creature feature for this week?
Let's do it.
Cool.
It's the creature feature.
Right. Well, we're into this week's creature feature. And Aaron, if we was to talk to you about giant invertebrates, two images might come to your mind as to where these would feature. The first one would be possibly 1950s sci-fi films, cheesy sci-fi films, where you end up with too much radiation from a science experiment gone wrong, and you end up with giant bugs, or literally just normal-sized bugs, being filmed up close with a woman screaming at an army general who shoots. I don't know. You know what I mean? Those like really cheesy 1950s films. The only ones that I'd say that's even close to that would be Eight-Legged Freaks. I really enjoy that film.
Although I know it's not actual Earthbound invertebrates, but Starship Troopers.
Okay, I mean that's good,
Kind of.
but it doesn't feature in that sort
No,
of giant
but it's still
bugs.
cheesy and it's still giant bug-like creatures.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's for a different sort of reason. But the other one, and the one that I think most of our listeners would possibly be more prehistorically minded when it comes to thinking of these animals, would be a fascinating period in Earth's history, the Carboniferous period, where we had giant invertebrates, and this was the norm to see, well, some of the largest arthropods that have ever existed on the planet just roaming around. And it's in this version of giant insects and giant invertebrates that we are looking at. We'll explore the giant radioactive bugs thing another time, or go and watch like Fallout or something. Um, Although there was no radroaches in that, which is a little bit of a shame. So imagine you're trekking through a steamy carboniferous coal forests. These forests stretch pretty much from pole to pole across the landmass that is Pangaea. And Britain is right in the middle of sort of the equatorial region at this point. So
Okay.
it's steamy, it's humid, the air feels physically heavier than it does at the moment, and that we'll touch on a bit more later. But out of the undergrowth, you see this creature raise up to your eye level, and essentially it's a giant millipede the size of a surfboard staring at you, and probably thinking, what on earth is this creature? Because, well, humans haven't evolved yet. So just imagine that you've gone back in a time machine. This creature is the animal that we're looking at this week, which is the Arthropleura. So what is an Arthropleura? Well, Arthropleura, which is Greek for jointed ribs, think pleurisy, it's to do with your ribs.
Yeah.
And arthro meaning jointed from arthropod, which in itself is actually a genus of millipedes. So it fits in the same like family of millipedes that we have examples of today. But the Arthropleuras were one specific genus that are now long since extinct. Sad, I know. That lived in what is now North America and Europe. So that's where most of the fossils of these guys have been found. You don't find them in what would become one day Gondwana land. Yeah, so the southern sort of parts of the world. And they date to anywhere between 345 to 290 million years. That's quite an extensive period of time, and actually longer than we initially thought. And we'll come back to that when we look at the size of these animals towards the end. They are currently the largest land-based arthropods that have ever existed. And do you know what today's largest land-living arthropod is? You should do. We've covered it on the podcast before.
It sounds familiar, but I'm really letting the team down because I'm not sure.
Think of animals that I'll give you some clues.
Okay.
They are renowned for turning up and clearing away waste. They are capable of climbing trees, and they are supposedly responsible.
The island species of I can't remember what island species, but it's a cockroach island species.
No.
Okay.
They are supposedly responsible for the demise of Amelia Earhart as well, which we did talk about.
Right, the crabs, of course.
Coconut crab. Yes, coconut crab is the largest land-living arthropod today.
That was
But
such an obvious answer as well, because
there was too many answers I could have given you that would have given it away instantly.
Yeah, but I could have known it would have been a crab anyway.
So they're currently, like I say, known as the largest the largest arthropod that has ever existed. Land living arthropod. It's too many L's there. And the largest species is Arthropleura armata, and that grew to be 2.5 meters long, although there are some thoughts it may have even grown longer than that. In comparison to the largest arthropod that has ever existed that we're aware of from the fossil record, that would be a Eurypterid, which I don't believe we've
never done that.
We've never covered sea scorpions. Anyway, the largest Eurypterid that's ever existed is Jacalopterus, and that is around 2.33 meters long to 2.59 meters long. So there's not very much in it.
Fair.
So there's a potential that obviously with like preservation bias or just the individuals being preserved at the right time, we may have bigger examples of either. And it's just pure luck as to which ones we've found. But they were aquatic, so it's a lot easier to become bigger in the water.
Yeah.
And that's why you tend to find large invertebrates easily living in the water. So Japanese spider crabs, they can become the size they are because of the depth that they live at. So in terms of what these mega millipedes look like, we have some ideas based on their fossils, and most of their fossils actually are of exuvia. Do you know what exuvia is?
I do not know.
Ah, you should do.
No,
you've looked after invertebrates.
Yeah, but I'm maybe I know in the back of my mind, and
you'll kick myself, yourself. But, you will.
But at the moment, it's not.
It is their shed skin. Every time,
every time.
Well, that's all right. Well, every time they shed their skeleton, their exoskeleton, they obviously have to do it so they can get bigger.
Yeah,
we've actually found that seems to be the majority of fossils are of exuvia.
Okay,
and it's basically gives you an idea of what these animals look like, and the best preserved ones have been these bits of exoskeleton. So we don't have whole impressions of the animal. We're bits basically, but enough to build up a picture. And it gives you an idea of what the animal looked like. So to give you an idea of what this animal would have looked like, because some of you may be picturing Arthropleura based on paleo art and games and things. Some of you may just be picturing a big millipede.
I was going to say a bit like a giant millipede that most people have been able to hold in their hands, but it's not quite like that, is it?
No. So you've got the ones that most people are aware of. They're the giant African millipede or the Mombasa train millipede. They're basically big. They're round. They are quite different to the millipedes we're looking at. There are, in fact, the largest group of millipedes in existence is the flat millipedes, and they have plate-like armor. I've always called them plate millipedes and flat millipedes, interchangeable sort of names. But if you imagine this giant millipede the size of a surfboard with flat plated armor, and then maybe sort of bowing a little bit up in the middle, almost like a trilobite. If you took a section of a trilobite and just elongated it, that's your Arthropleura there.
They remind me of some of the marine louse animals.
Yeah, they do look very isopod-like in a lot of ways.
That's the word.
Yeah. So some of their most distinguishing features with their legs, with up to 8 segments on each leg itself, and as many as 30 pairs. And just like modern-day millipedes, each segment of the body would have had 2 pairs of legs on each side. Whereas a centipede, which is their carnivorous cousins, has just 1 pair of like 1 leg on either side. So if you take a segment of a millipede, it's got 4 legs on each segment as you go down the body. A centipede just has 2 per segment. That's the easiest way to tell them apart, really. Depending on where you live in the world, you may have, you'll have both, but they're usually a lot smaller. Most of our millipedes in this country are pretty small.
Yeah.
Most of our centipedes, even the Scolopendras, which we have, are only about that big.
Yeah. I've seen plenty of those recently. The centipedes, not so much millipedes.
You'll find them in different places, but yeah, centipedes are more active hunters. Millipedes are detritivores. You'll find them in amongst the leaf
Some
litter.
centipedes give nasty bites.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. So these exoskeletons as well are extremely tough, and in fact, a specimen that was found in the UK in 2021, I think we may have even reported on this. It may have been one of our very first stories. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Which has an estimated entire body length of about 2.7 meters, because it was only a portion of the body that was found. It was found in the UK, and from these bits, these are some of the best preserved bits of an exoskeleton from an exuvia. Again, they've been able to work out, let's say, it would have been about 2.7 meters long and roughly around 50 kilos in weight. So imagine a 50-kilo millipede.
Yeah, that's well, much am I? I'm like
It's about
high 80s, so it's not that much lighter than me, really.
It's somewhere around the region of I'm trying to think, like a sheep, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, that's a heavy animal.
Yeah, they are hefty things, and they're the upper limits, realistically, of what we can, what you can have with armor plating like that to an extent. So we have not very much fossil material and what their head looked like. In fact, we have almost none. There have been occasions where they found bits of what they think are the jaws, but it's all sort of open for debate. But it's thought that essentially they are a millipede. They show all the other characteristics of a millipede, and there are very similar members of the arthropleurids, which is that whole group that contains Arthropleura as a genus. They've based their discovery on what the head of Arthropleura would have looked like from another arthropleurid called Microdec Semplex rolfii. Now, the fossils of this one are a little bit smaller than Arthropleura. They're actually less than 5 millimeters in length.
Oh wow!
So
that's quite a difference.
It sits in this family of giant millipedes, and then you get these tiny version ones.
Spectrum of sizes going on.
Yeah,
very good.
But basically, it gives us an idea of what their head looked like, and no great surprise. To, I suppose, us as lay people when it comes to differentiating the heads of different millipedes, because I'm sure to an entomologist there are massive differences. But their head looks pretty much like a millipede. And if you imagine scaling that up to some degree, that's what you'll end up with as as what our Arthropleura will look like. So imagine this head having basically munching jaws for pulverizing through all sorts of different plant material that it would have found in these coal forests, probably even eating dead animals as well. I mean, modern day millipedes are detritivores, which means they eat rubbish. And they found gut contents of some of the fossils as well.
Oh, really?
So they have found dead ones, but it looks like it's things like lepidendrons, which are prehistoric plants that made up most of the sort of jungles throughout the rainforest of the Carboniferous period. So they're not trees; they're called scale trees. They're more. It's hard to describe what they are.
I can't think of anything around today that
no, their whole family is gone. Their whole family is gone.
No, but I mean, like, would be a good kind of picture for people. I don't.
Yeah,
I can't think of anything.
Well, basically, if you've ever driven in a car, or used petrol or any kind of petrochemical whatsoever, you have used rotted down bits of this coal forest. That is where the Carboniferous ended up in a lot of ways, in coal, in oil. All of that has basically come from these massive deposits of rotting vegetation.
It's called fossil fuels for a reason.
Well, yeah, it's also why we call it the Carboniferous.
Yeah.
Carbon. So yeah, they would have been eating rotting plant material. They'd have also probably been eating dead animals as well, because just like modern day millipedes, they would have probably been detritivores, which means they'd eat pretty much anything.
They're part of nature's cleanup crew.
Yeah, basically. And at that size, they're doing a lot more cleaning up than a lot of other animals, I imagine. So how on earth do we know about this creature as well? Well, most of the material that we have, like I say, comes from its exoskeleton. Which would have been harder than most other exoskeletons of different arthropods roaming around at that particular point. So they're going to preserve a bit better. Think of when we talked about fossils of Diplodocus last week.
Yep.
Bones of sauropods preserve really well because they're big, tough bones. So big, tough bits of an arthropod are going to preserve better.
But interesting similarity to your Arthropleura,
The head.
Diplodocus didn't have a head, so
Yeah.
they used another Diplodocid
to fill
its
in the
place,
gap. Yeah. Obviously, that exoskeleton would be more likely to survive the fossilization process. And in fact, when it comes to most of these fossils as well, we're exceedingly lucky, even in the first place, because if you think of what a coal forest or any kind of rainforest or any sort of area where there are lots of vegetation and lots of wet ground, the ground is very acidic, and that's not good for fossilization. So a lot of these fossils have actually turned up on sandy beaches and muddy areas where there's less to obviously make the thing rot down a lot quicker. And this is also where we find the second great version of their fossils. And these are what are known as ichnofossils. And this is actually the fossils of Arthropleura that I've been able to go and see. These are trackways. And it's one of these trackways that I was able to go and see up in Crail, just outside of north of Edinburgh, a really nice little town. And you can go there onto this beach, and there are boulders. I mean, about the same size as, I don't know, a washing machine. And they're big flat bits of what was a prehistoric sort of muddy basin, I'm guessing at some point. And there are trackways, and the tracks themselves are easily 20 to 30 centimeters apart. So that's the width of the animal going across.
Right,
and it's just lots of little dots going down this beach. And yeah, that's essentially an Arthropleura, just
aren't we?
just tracking its way along the ground, just doing its thing. And they've been preserved nicely in these areas. And that actually is how we know about the largest one as well, because it was up to 50 centimeters across.
Wow, okay.
And it is these impressions on muddy, wet ground that have basically given us these tracks. Initially, they were thought to be things from like trilobite fossils, or I mean, that would have been a huge trilobite anyway, or fish moving across muddy ground. But they turn up in these areas where we then find fossils of Arthropleura. So you basically can put two and two together and see that these are most likely the tracks of an Arthropleura in these areas. Another little thing about Crail as a place to go. They've got there's a lovely little cafe there where you could sit out and you could look onto this beach. Just as a, if anyone's up in Scotland and wanting to go to that beach, it's a really easily accessible one. You can't take anything away. There aren't fossils there in that sort of sense, but you go there to look at those fossils. Think of it like an open air gallery almost.
Yeah, yeah.
The other really cool thing is it's the first place I've ever seen eider ducks.
Oh, really?
And I
Okay.
love eider ducks.
They
and I'm
are
going
cool,
to.
yeah. So just quickly, is there any protection from from the elements for these
No,
fossils?
they're just sort of there.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's one of those sort of do we protect them by taking them from where they are and put them in a museum? I could see the benefit of doing that.
Yeah.
I could see the benefit of making copies of them and doing that. But in a way, them being there, it makes them accessible, but it makes it still a bit of a journey that you've got to go on to find them.
Yeah, there's a bit of a thrill to that, really, isn't there? I can imagine
it's like the
being quite
fossil
excited
walkway in Lyme Regis, where there's all those ammonites fossilized into the ground basically that you walk on, and you know that within 100 to 200 years they'll be gone. They'll have worn away by the sea, and it's sad in some ways, but it's been happening in that place for a lot longer than we've been around contemplating it. So yeah, it's it's swings and roundabouts and how we should look at preserving. So why on earth did these creatures get so big? Well, the traditional view as to why these millipedes got so big, and not just these guys as well, things like giant
Meganura?
Yes, so Meganura, a giant griffin fly, which is basically like a dragonfly, which had the wingspan of a small bird of prey, about 30, 40 centimeters.
Can you imagine a dragonfly like that today?
Slightly terrifying.
It'd go into
I must admit,
extinction
and
pretty quickly because people wouldn't like it.
well, yeah, I like invertebrates, but even I must admit, if that thing landed,
On your nose.
well, you'd notice it. You'd certainly notice it.
No.
Yeah, they must have been supreme predators to watch fly.
Mm.
I mean, just watching modern day dragonflies are amazing creatures. There was also giant-ish cockroaches, and lots of other much larger invertebrates. So the traditional view as to why these guys were so big is the atmospheric content of oxygen.
Yes.
Because the planet was basically covered in forest, there was more oxygen in the atmosphere of about 35%. To give you an idea of where we sit today, it's 21%. So it's come down a bit. So you're not going to be sort of breathing in anywhere near as much.
Doesn't sound like much of a drop, but it actually is. You can tell, you can get an idea for the effects of this when you go up and do things like Free Peak Challenge or go up Kilimanjaro or something like that. People who've been up Everest or up to base camp and stuff, you will feel the effects of
less oxygen.
Yeah, drops in oxygen.
So yeah, it is important. Obviously, oxygen. Without
Oxygen
it, you
good.
can't do much. Yeah, oxygen good. Basically, the oxygen content seems to decrease towards the end of the Carboniferous period. This is partly to do with the rainforest collapse of the Carboniferous period heading into the Permian. Essentially, these global forests were replaced with deserts in a lot of areas, and a lot of these Carboniferous forests did hold on in some areas around the equator and bits and pieces, but they were replaced by the Permian, which is a lot drier and a lot hotter. And that is heading towards. We've still got a bit of time before it heads into the Great Dying, but still, that is the period that replaces the Carboniferous era. And so the traditional thought is that that was what finished off a lot of these giant invertebrates because there wasn't the oxygen around. It all comes down to being able to breathe, essentially. So the thought is that there was more oxygen and allowed these guys to breathe more, hence why they were able to get big. I'd like to try an experiment with our audience at the moment. So if everyone could try this, it's a really, really hard experiment, this one. I'd like you to try and breathe in and breathe out. So you have just done something now that no invertebrate can do. You have used your ribs and your chest muscles and your stomach muscles, your intercostals. You've used your diaphragm possibly to pull air into your body and then pump it back out. No invertebrate can do that. And that is because they don't possess lungs like we do. Their respiratory system is very, very different. It is basically made up of lots of holes that run down the length of the animal called spiracles. And essentially the air diffuses through their body. Think of it a bit like a sponge, really. If you put a sponge in water, it soaks up water.
Yeah.
But if you, well, this is where I think the analogy runs short. If you put a sponge on a table next to some water, it doesn't pull the water into it. But if you squeeze the sponge down and it's next to the water, it will pull the water into it. That might actually work. I don't know. We'll see if that goes with it. But you get what I mean.
Basically, go squeezing bugs.
They can't pull oxygen into their bodies, which limits how big that they can actually get. And so that they can't pull more in. So the larger the animal gets, the more oxygen it's obviously got to have to be able to run its body.
Yeah.
And you reach a certain point where you just can't diffuse any more oxygen into your body. And that really limits the growth of things. But this was the traditional view as to why these animals got so big, is there was more oxygen in the atmosphere, easier for them to diffuse oxygen through their body, so they got bigger.
Right.
That has been the traditional view for a very, very long time. And only within the last couple of years or so is it seems that there is a different thought, is that it's not just that, and oxygen doesn't play that much of a difference. because towards the end of the period where Arthropleura was around, the oxygen content was only about 2% different to what it is today in the Permian era.
Right. Okay.
So obviously, it doesn't play as much of an issue.
No, because it would have been
These were
declining the
still
whole time.
giant invertebrates into a period where the oxygen saturation had gone down. But it still played a part. The other thought is that, well, basically, these guys were living in areas and living at a time where they were the biggest thing around.
Yeah.
Tetrapods, our ancestors, the amphibians, and then some of the very early reptiles were still appearing at this point, and basically they were outcompeted by these large arthropods, which could just move through them and not be bothered by them. You know, you'd have to have fairly decent teeth to be able to take on the armor of an Arthropleura, especially a
Yeah.
full-grown one. So they pretty much uncompeted, uncontested, and could get as big as they needed to. They obviously reach a couple of upper limits. Like I say, the oxygen issue, even if the oxygen is higher, they still can't get more of it out of the air. And there's people trying to work out as to whether, you know, where this leads even today, like by giving higher oxygen saturation to modern day insects to see if they'll grow bigger and all sorts of things like that. Although, you know, as far as I'm aware, we haven't got any giant cockroaches coming out of some of these labs or
I
anything,
was gonna say,
which would be really cool.
Yeah.
But the other thought as well, and the other way that this works, and the reason why we don't see giant invertebrates roaming around, is you get to a certain size limit where your body armor, your exoskeleton, is too heavy to do anything. So
Right.
if you think of an animal today, the largest land living animal we have, an elephant.
Yep.
It has got a massively heavy skeleton. And in theory, because we know elephants have got bigger than African elephants, and we know that animals have existed larger than them, so dinosaurs, their skeletons can get as big as they physically can. There are upper limits for animals with skeletons, but an animal in with a skeleton is fleshy on the outside. It just has to grow, and everything grows with it. You know,
Yep.
an animal in an exoskeleton can only grow so large before it has to shed its exoskeleton. But you run into some real issues because you've got to break that exoskeleton at some point to be able to pull yourself out
Yeah.
and be in a new molt. So you get to a point where your exoskeleton has to be so thick to support the weight of your exoskeleton that you can't get out of your exoskeleton to grow any larger. So you die in the process of getting larger.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
your exoskeleton would be so heavy that you couldn't move because your muscles, the muscles inside of the animal, would not be able to power the motion of it.
Yeah.
So there are upper limits to things as well. They're all, I think that's called the square cube law.
Yes, that is right. That is called the square cube law.
And it's all these sort of fundamental or mathematical, like, you know, things that say you can have this size and you can't go any higher, you know, without there being some way of working around it. So yeah, that's why we basically have no giant invertebrates today, apart from in the deep sea or on islands, you know, coconut crabs and things like that. Mostly because there are other animals that will eat them. You know, we have animals that have the jaw strength to smash through an exoskeleton. We have animals that will easily outcompete them as well.
Yeah.
So that's just why we don't see them. The oxygen saturation is not there, and the higher content of it. And yeah, basically their exoskeletons can only reach a certain size before they can't get any bigger. Sad to say, because I'd like to see some giant arthropods. Arthropleura would be a very cool one to have. I think
Yeah.
50 kilo millipede the size of a surfboard roaming around would be absolutely awesome.
That would be cool. Squished on by my Diplodocus.
So for 45 million years, Arthropleura essentially was uncontested as a genus of giant invertebrates roaming around these coal forests. But as the coal forests started to disappear at the end of the Carboniferous, as larger animals started to outcompete them, and obviously as the oxygen content went down as well, it means that their reigns soon came to an end. And nowadays, like I say, you won't see anything larger on the land than a coconut crab. And if you want to see a giant millipede, I mean, the biggest one's what, maybe a foot at the most. Maybe 30 centimeters. They're not exactly massive. They're lovely creatures, but they are distant relatives of them. So gone are the days of the massive millipedes. When it comes to this species, they are certainly one of the most fascinating giant invertebrates that have ever existed, I think. And I don't know how we've got to this point and not mentioned them realistically. There's so many animals that I think that of when we look at these, the ones that we have done. But I think the best version in paleomedia sort of that's turned up is the ones that was in the Walking with Dinosaurs spin-off, Walking with Monsters.
Yes.
Where it rears up against a tetrapod. Now, as to whether it could rear up or not, that's speculative, but I like to think that it could rear up at that sort of size. It could have climbed up a tree a bit, or looked you in the eye. Probably wouldn't have been able to see very much because it didn't really need much in the way of vision, and most millipedes are kind of blind. But yeah, an exceedingly cool arthropod, and one that sadly is no longer with us.
I was gonna say I am surprised that you hadn't done this one in season 1, to be honest. I was expecting Arthropleura to come up.
Yeah.
Then yeah, it is a cool animal.
A good excuse as well, with if you're in the UK, especially if you're in Scotland, a good excuse to go and check out Crail. Go and see some eider ducks because they sound absolutely awesome. Eider ducks sound like little old ladies, very excited about things. Going, ooh,
Yeah.
Go and check out Crail. Go and see the fossil footprints that are there because they're right there. You can go and spot them. Really easy. So should we?
I should have gone there when I was working in Edinburgh. I never went.
I mean, it's not directly in Edinburgh. It's outside of Edinburgh, but it's worth the trip.
But yeah, if you can get around, then you should.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Let's scuttle on into our emails for this week.
Yeah. Let's see what we've got.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, we're into this week's emails, and we're going to start things off with last week's question, which I did predict was not going to have anywhere near as many answers to it as we've had of late. I don't know why I was able to predict that one, but it was, what is the first dinosaur skeleton you remember seeing as a kid? And we've had Patreon member of the podcast, Jen Babs, commenting, face to face, it would have been the T-Rex at either the Manchester Museum or the Natural History Museum with the Girl Guides. And yeah, that's quite a cool T-Rex skeleton in the Natural History Museum in Manchester. It's quite cool.
I've not been to Manchester Natural History Museum.
Really nice museum.
That go up there.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a visit. Yeah, cool. And that was the only comment we got on this week's one. Or last week's post.
I'm gonna just go out on a limb here and say that you didn't predict that you wouldn't you got it. You jinxed it.
Well, all right, yeah.
I reckon that's the kind of question that people would answer.
Well,
but you jinxed it, so they were probably trying to answer, and it wasn't.
I wasn't allowing them. Right, yeah. Blame technology. Yeah. Well, based on the fact that this week I've been able to handle and see an exceedingly cool species of cockroach, and we've talked about Arthropleura, a giant invertebrate. We're going to ask you, what is the largest invertebrate that you have ever come across? Pictures welcome on this one as well.
Very, very well.
Because I always find it funny when people go, oh, I've seen a giant spider. It was huge. It was that big. People don't know what giant spiders are in this country, I'd say. Anyone living in Australia, you definitely get to be able to say, yes, we've got giant spiders, because you do. What would you say is the one that you've seen, the biggest invertebrate? I mean, technically, you could say octopus as well if you caught an octopus.
I was going to say I've seen octopus and sepia, so I think because originally I was going along the lines of that swallowtail moth that I saw in Asia.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Which is big, but it's not octopus big.
No, that's true.
In fact, it's not even cuttlefish big. Yeah, I think it's going to be octopus.
Okay. What about land-based one would be the swallowtail?
Land-based one would be the swallowtail.
Yeah.
There's few things I can think of that would get that size, especially in this country.
Marine-wise, I'm going to say lobster, because I've seen a pretty big lobster, spiny lobster in Australia, which are basically they're called crayfish in a lot of places, but they're not freshwater, they're marines, or spiny lobster is the other name for them, because they don't have the big claws that lobsters do. Land-based, I'm going to say a Scolopendra centipede, which was in Australia, in our house actually. When I sort of unfurled a curtain, it flopped out onto the floor, and this thing was big. Yeah, this was easily 30 centimeters, if not a bit more, big, and they are fast, venomous, and they're probably the only invertebrate that I think I don't like.
Oh yeah,
Like they actively give me a little bit of a
the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, they're actively, but that's because they are fast, aggressive, venomous, and strong as well. They're just insane creatures. I mean, I respect them for what they are, but having had one in the zoo that I worked with, that was probably the most like I always was just a little bit more on the security side with that thing, because if they manage to escape, they're gone.
Yeah.
And being potentially venomous is obviously a safety risk as well. So
I don't know what species of centipede it was, but it bit someone that I was volunteering with in Asia, and she was really poorly.
probably a
Really, really
Scolopendra.
poorly.
They're the big ones. We even get them here in the UK, like I said in the Arthropleura segment. If you find a big chunky-ish centipede in the UK in your garden, that's a Scolopendra. That's as big as ours get. A couple of centimeters, but they're in the same family as those giant ones, which can get anywhere up to that sort of size.
I'm now thinking that I saw them whilst I was out there, but
they're known to even hang from the roof of caves and catch bats mid-flight.
Wow, I did not
They
know that.
are impressive animals in what they do.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I still think that swallowtail moth was bigger. Probably not in terms of mass, but in terms of surface area covered. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let us know what your biggest invertebrate you've ever encountered, land-based or marine. If you've been lucky enough to see something like a Pacific giant octopus or a giant squid, you definitely win. This hands down, I don't think you're going to beat that. But yes, you can do that on our Facebook page. You can also let us know as well on our YouTube comments page as well, because, well, it's always interesting to see what people have come across, and there is nowhere on the planet that you're not going to have come across an invertebrate. Even in Antarctica, there are some, just not very big.
Yeah.
And that nicely leads us into other ways that you can get in contact with us. That's either via our YouTube comments on whatever videos, or you can email us as well. Our email address is thenathistorykupboard@gmail.com. Aaron, what do we got? I think you said we've got a few different bits and pieces this week.
Yeah, quite nice actually. We've got a couple from on YouTube. So I suppose we'll start with Nick to Nick on YouTube, who said that he was talking about beton, and that they're
showing off again.
Yeah, very difficult to take photos of, same as Potteroo. And on the same kind of comment thread, another YouTube viewer, Renin Tom, said that this is in answer to a couple of weeks back. It's a bit of a late one, but a couple of weeks back we asked what's the cutest baby animal that you, in your opinion, and we overlooked massively because he came up with one that's so obvious. I don't know how we didn't get it.
What's that?
He said baby crocodiles.
Oh, yeah.
I think that most crocodilian babies are super cute, as they always have a toothy grin on their face, and yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are
ridiculously
cute.
Having worked with two species and seen both at their infant, like stage, yes, they are incredibly cute.
Yeah.
But that's our YouTube comments for the moment. We do have 2 emails, and they're both from Patreon supporters actually.
Ah.
So I'll deal with the oldest one first. And this one comes to us from Nick to Nick, who has
Better not be showing off again.
no, I don't think he is this time, if I remember right. I just need to. There we go. Yeah. So he says, "Hey guys, just for clarity's sake, I actually answered Nick through email because it was a more of a kind of needing immediate
Conversation.
advice. But the advice I gave him would be handy to our listeners, our audio listeners still. So Nick says, "Hey guys, just a quick question. What would be the best way for me to consume the podcast to best help the podcast? I'm a premium user on Spotify and YouTube. I was thinking YouTube would be more helpful. It probably doesn't make much difference, but every little thing helps. Looking forward to this week's episode. Cheers, Nick." So I will read out my answer to him, I think, because it's probably going to be the best way of answering it. I thought it was worth reading this one out just in case there are other listeners who want to say that.
Non-stop, leaving it on. Like
Yes,
on repeat.
on loop.
Yeah.
On loop.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not the worst idea. Like when you're asleep, just leave your laptop downstairs playing
just
it over
playing
and
it
over.
continuously.
The more views we get,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
better. Which is so. It's basically I said to him very much the same thing. We don't really like to put pressure on people. If you can help us, that's wonderful. But I basically said that essentially it boils down to your consumption habits. So for myself, I listen to podcasts when I'm at work or driving or going for a walk, and then I watch YouTube when I'm doing housework or I'm chilling on the sofa or I'm looking for something specific. Now, with that in mind, to tackle his specific question, what version of consumption would best help us, to be completely transparent with you all, you lose nothing by listening to us on Spotify.
Yeah.
We don't really lose anything by you listening to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. But you yourselves will gain a lot more from watching us on YouTube because you get to see our faces, which maybe might not be it might not be an advantage to you guys, but at least you can put faces to the voices, which I think is always nice. But more importantly than that, we use a lot of imagery.
Yeah, it's been really good now to start
Photographs.
throwing things in there.
Drew's artwork is
I've
always
started
up here.
animating it as well.
Cool.
You know?
So yeah, there's a lot of benefits for you guys in watching us on YouTube as opposed to listening. But again, just to be transparent, it's actually more beneficial to us if you watch us on YouTube. Essentially, with the audio version, with the podcast version, if that's how you consume, if that's how you prefer to consume, that's great. As I say, there's a time and a place for me where I'll listen to podcasts or watch a YouTube. And you guys as listeners and us as podcast hosts, neither party loses anything from that. But if you go to YouTube, you eke us closer to being able to. I don't know if we'll ever get to monetize this, but you do eke us closer to that. You also eke us closer to the benefits of being on YouTube.
We're never going to get rich from doing that. But to be honest, it's the same with a lot of YouTube channels nowadays. It's down to Patreon. It's down to like memberships and all those sorts of things. And eventually, and it is coming, it is definitely coming, we are going to have more merchandise in the future. I think it's safe enough to say that because we have produced some stuff. We just haven't made it public yet as to when and where it will be available. But there will be stuff eventually coming out. We're just working out the kinks of getting it out there, which will make it more of a thing, I suppose. I'm going to
wrap this. I'll wrap what I was saying up basically. Essentially, don't let this sway your decision.
No, we don't do this for the money. We do this because we enjoy it.
But the more views we get on YouTube, the more chance our audience gets to grow, and that's for the audio as well. The more views we get on YouTube, the more our audience across platforms will grow. Whereas with the audio only, it's a lot more difficult to do that. So
it's hard to quantify where each listenership comes from and where and what it influences. But yeah, I think you're right. YouTube will probably influence more people to come to it from other places. It's a lot easier to be sort of recommended on things like that when you get to a certain level with listenership and watching. But yeah, I do think for all of our visuals that we've now started to use into the podcast, it is more beneficial to view it. But it's entirely down to you, because like say I do the same. If I'm in the garden or if I'm driving somewhere, I have headphones on and a podcast on, and then if I'm usually when I'm in between editing parts of this, I usually have YouTube on the TV to just small videos or something, or just to distract me from midway through doing this or something.
Yeah. So yeah, no pressure. However you guys want to consume the podcast is up to you. Just he was asking what benefits us. Full transparency, probably YouTube. But don't let that sway you. The other email comes to us from another Patreon supporter, which is fantastic. We love hearing from all of our listeners and viewers, not just our patrons, but it's always nice to hear from the patrons to know that they are still getting they are
enjoying what
getting something out of this. So this comes to us from Jen Greenhall. Now I did ask permission to read this one out because I was a bit unclear on whether it was one just for us. But again, it was one that could be beneficial to be heard. And this relates back to the episode that Drew was on with us.
Oh yeah.
The high brown butterfly.
The high brown fritillary.
Thank you. And she says, "Hello, you lovely lot. Interesting new scientist article, mini article about the behavior of sea slugs. I'll have a look at that, and maybe we will include it in next week's
like a sea slug.
Got to love the sea slugs and sea cucumbers. As always, I'm playing catch up, but I do get there, and it was lovely to hear from Drew. So we'll pass on that because we'll encourage him to come back. And I'm thrilled that us up north are providing a habitat for an endangered species. So that's regarding that butterfly. I was listening to your discussion last week relating to the RSPCA and their various endorsements, and to be honest, I totally agree with Aaron. Yay! When he talked about the leadership and management of the organization, perhaps losing sight of the real purpose of the organization and the organization being run as a business. It is difficult to support when information relating to the salaries is published too. Red Tractor and Farm Assured really do have limited value in terms of animal welfare from what I can see. I also believe that the Animal Welfare Act 5 Animal Welfare Act 5 animal needs are very limited in terms of actual animal welfare. Having taught about this, Gareth Gareth too, I'm sure she says, in lectures.
Oh yes.
It is apparent that they are a bare minimum, and while students may be able to rhyme them off, it is quite the challenge to get them to really reflect on this in terms of commercial production of animals and their products, especially if we ask them to link this to their consumerism. They do find it much easier to look at their own animals and pets. More and more of our meat and milk producing animals are being kept indoors all the time. This is true. Even at the college I work at, our dairy herd is kept in and does not get to graze in fields anymore. The grass is brought to them with the addition of feed to improve production. If you measure this with the 5 animal needs, they are being met, but by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah.
If I then think about the animals that rely on grazing animals, like the dung beetle from previous creature features, then you can see why there are reducing numbers. George Monbiot often points out things we have missed or would rather not see. For example, it had never occurred to me that the Lake District is version on something like a desert until I read an article on his. I'll finish this and then I'll say something.
Figurative desert as opposed to literal because it's not lacking in water.
I think what she's describing is how I describe Exmoor. everybody looks at Exmoor as this beauty spot,
Pristine, yeah.
and I think it is barren as anything because I look at it and I see just swaths of land that no longer has biodiversity on it, other than the bare minimum. But you did continue. Where was it? Yes, there is minimal wildlife there, which is what I just said, considering the space and population, and a very limited range of fauna, with the exception of some pockets here and there. If you look at the map of sites of special scientific interest in the UK, one would think that the lakes would be a significant contribution to the overall acreage of designated sites, but it isn't. Less than 20% is designated for its biodiversity, and of that 20%, and of that 20% is in favourable condition. A further 38% is in less favourable condition. Some of George Monbiot's books are really good too. I don't know what the answer is, and I guess I'm a hypocrite as I eat meat, drive a car, and all that stuff. So I'm adding to the pressure put on our resources.
It's hard not to do those things in a lot of ways. I would say I'm just as much of a hypocrite.
Was it on the podcast or was it in personal conversation where I said everybody is either
No, I think you said that on that.
an a-hole, to keep it PC,
Yeah.
or a hypocrite, and I would rather be a hypocrite than an a-hole.
Yes.
Yeah. So we all do things that aren't good for the planet, but we
Yeah.
try to make changes where we can. She says, I don't have kids though, so that has to work in my favor. She then says that this isn't for reading out loud, just a brain dump after listening to the show. And she wasn't going to send. I wasn't going to send it in case you all think I'm a bit weird.
No,
but we don't think you're weird, and I think one of the main things that we like about this email is that it's a interaction to do with at least two past creature features and at least one
news article,
one or two previous news articles. Yeah, so it's nice because it's a bit of feedback in a way. But yeah, you're quite right about a lot of those things. Exmoor is looked at very much like the Lake District as a place of beauty, like I said, but really it's biodiversity. It's barren in terms of biodiversity. And when you look at the amount of space that we have in the UK for all the biodiversity we should have, including wolves and lynx, and then compare us with the surface area of other countries that have similar population densities of humans but have more biodiversity, again including wolves, we are so far behind the curve, behind the trend. It's unreal. We have plenty of space for the animals that we should have here. We're just not using the space properly, and no one wants to use the space properly.
Yeah.
And when it comes to organizations like RSPCA, unfortunately, yeah, there needs to be a call to wake up and remember who they are.
I will say that, yeah, on the 5 needs,
yes,
and them not being met in a lot of ways, I think there's almost a disconnect. Now, I'm not sure what the college that you work at is like, as to whether the animal care aspect is with the agriculture aspect of it as well. But what I've tend to find, or what I've tend to have seen, is they're usually two separate things, and the sort of, and this is me sort of coming down on farming in a lot of ways, which I don't want to, because I like farm animals, in as much as I like any other animal. But I found that agricultural students are in some ways taught to basically see the animal as a product, whereas animal care students are taught to see the animal as an animal. And sometimes the sort of, it's because of the sort of views of people passing it down. Agriculture is seen as it is an industry, and unfortunately it's been pushed that way because of the sort of consumerism side of it, where we need to get as much out of it. We need to get as much as we can. Think back to the dung beetle episode as well, where we talked about how agriculture intensified after the Second World War to pump as much out of the land as you possibly can, and the animals become part of that. And yeah, a lot of the 5 welfare needs are just met, which doesn't help. Personally, I really like the Zoo Licensing Act, where there are 12 different aspects for like the Zoo Licensing Act that you have to meet to be able to run a zoo. Now,
Mm.
some of them don't apply to your average animal care thing, but there is much more about provision of enrichment. There's provision, different other things that are in there, which I think are better than the 5 animal welfare needs, which, as you're saying, is students are almost taught to rattle them off because it's
Yeah.
what the awarding bodies want. They want you to be able to just go blah 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 blah, almost like times table that you're forced to do in school. 2 times 2 is that sort of thing. So yeah, there needs to be almost from a ground up reteaching of how we look at those welfare needs, how industry bodies and charities that are supposed to be doing the welfare side of it look at it as well. And from almost a governmental point of view, the whole thing needs to be reshaped. But that's a whole thing for a whole other day. So
Yeah. My
otherwise,
thing
we're going to
on,
end up going on too long, I think. But
yeah. I always remember that I even we mentioned about you mentioned about students and their pets, but then you get people who will quite happily bemoan and
oh
rant about zoos,
yeah,
but their dogs and cats at home are in far worse conditions when you apply the animal care kind of
guidelines.
mantras,
Yeah,
the guidelines to it. And then even zoos, you didn't mention zoos in your email, but I'm going to,
yeah, good zoos
especially
and bad
safari
zoos.
parks,
Yeah,
because quite frankly, I find safari parks, having worked in zoos and safari parks, and been lucky enough that in one of the safari parks, it had a truly safari section and a truly zoo section. But there were some safari park minded um, staff there
mm.
who were all lovely and all cared for the animals wonderfully. However, I always remember we were designing kind of conceptualizing the bush dog enclosure and a tiger enclosure, and we were told that we were over engineering it and that we have too much of a uh, zoo mind. We're looking at a zoo mind. These guys here, we have lots of space because we're a safari park, and safari parks do rest far too much on their space. I have been to several safari parks where animals are just in big fields.
Mm.
And again, I can compare safari park tiger enclosures because tigers are what I know. Not this one. This tiger enclosure where I worked was the best tiger enclosure in Europe, I reckon. But I have been to tiger enclosures that are either in a enclosed bit of woodland or an enclosed field, essentially. And then you go to a zoo that's a lot smaller and not getting the same amount of footfall and therefore not amount of money, and they have a smaller tiger enclosure, but there's a damn sight more going on in there, and those tigers are a lot healthier. They're showing the right body conformation, they're showing the right natural behaviors,
Well, like I
all
say,
because of what's going inside that
it's not
enclosure.
size, it's complexity.
It is,
So
yeah. But I mean, we could,
yeah,
like
we
you
could
said,
go
we
on
could
for
rattle on
hours.
for a long time. So I think
Yeah.
we've done
Well,
that one.
that's one of the many ways you can get in contact with us. Is via email or via our YouTube page, YouTube comments. The other way is to become a Patreon, like our lovely people that Erin is going to tell us about now.
Yeah, that's right, Gareth. Every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, and for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways, and will hopefully see us going out and doing some more over the coming months. But we really can't thank you enough. Now, we do appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and the support you offer us through listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. So please continue to do that. But if you feel that we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, then there are actually 2 tiers currently through which you can do that, and that's the nature nerds and the animal ambassadors. And as I say every week, we will have more information on those at a later date. But for now, once again, thank you so much for your continued support.
Yes, massive thank you to all our Patreons. And like I say, there are a variety of other ways that you can help us out. It's not always about money. In fact, you can help us out in the simplest way by, well, liking, subscribing, commenting on whatever service you are listening or watching us on, like a bell, ringer, subscribe, poker sheep, I don't know, all of those different ones, whichever way you want to do that. Basically, any interaction helps massively and does a huge amount for us. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell a giant Arthropleura as it rumbles past in a coal forest in the Carboniferous. Might be a bit hard to do that one. But that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So a big thank you, Aaron.
Very welcome. Thank you. Another fun one. Another delve into an animal that I'm not particularly clued up on, but an animal that I no less have always found cool. And just to reiterate a third time between us, please like this video or like this audio and subscribe. Very important.
And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye.
One does not simply surf on a giant Arthropleura, even though it's the size of a surfboard.
You read my mind. That was where I was going.